I never thought the day would come when my own mother would put my daughters at risk. Yet here I am watching her sell her future to protect my brother Jake, a convicted offender fighting for his right to be around my girls. Emily is only 8, Amanda is 6, and little Lily just turned 4. These innocent children are the center of my world, and I would do anything to protect them, even if it means going to war with the woman who raised me. Before I tell you how this family nightmare unfolded, let me know where you are watching from today, and if you have ever had to protect your kids from your own family, hit subscribe to join our community of survivors. Growing up, I always knew something was off about my little brother Jake. 3 years younger than me, he seemed to get away with behaviors that would have landed me in serious trouble. There were small incidents at first, hurting neighborhood pets, stealing things from classmates, lying compulsively, but my mother Lynn always had an excuse ready. Boys will be boys, she would say with that dismissive wave of her hand. Jake is just more spirited than you. By the time we were teenagers, Jake had graduated to more concerning behavior. I caught him spying on the girl next door through her window. When I confronted him, he laughed it off. I told our parents, but Lynn immediately defended him. He is just curious about girls. That is normal for a 15-year-old. My father, always the passive figure in our family, would simply nod along with whatever Lynn decided. Your mother knows best was his mantra, one that absolved him from having to take any real parental responsibility. I tried to distance myself from Jake as we got older. I worked hard in school, got a scholarship to college, and moved away as soon as I could. During those years, the calls from home would usually revolve around Jake, his latest troubles, how misunderstood he was, and how I should be more supportive as his big brother. I met Sarah during my junior year of college. She was everything my family was not: warm, stable, and genuinely caring. We dated for 3 years before getting married, and I was honest with her about my family from the beginning. I want to build something different with you, I told her one night as we sat on the rooftop of our apartment building. A family where everyone is safe and respected. She squeezed my hand. That sounds perfect to me. When Emily was born, I felt a love I had never experienced before. This tiny human depended on me completely, and I swore I would never let her down. Amanda came 2 years later, and then Lily 2 years after that. Our home was filled with laughter, bedtime stories, and the kind of security I had only dreamed of as a child. We kept contact with my family minimal. Holiday calls, occasional visits with strict boundaries. Always on our terms, always with me present, and never overnight. Lynn complained constantly about not seeing her granddaughters enough, but I stood firm. Sarah and I had agreed that our children would never be alone with my brother, and preferably not with my parents either. Then came the call that changed everything. Jake has been arrested, my father said, his voice uncharacteristically shaky. The charges were serious: inappropriate behavior with minors, multiple victims, evidence that couldn't be explained away. I felt sick to my stomach, but not surprised. The signs had been there for years, warnings I had tried to sound, but no one would listen. The trial was quick. Jake pleaded guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence. 5 years with potential for early release on good behavior. When the judge read the sentence, I heard Lynn sob behind me in the courtroom. Not for the victims, for Jake. This will ruin his life, she kept saying. He made a mistake. He needs help, not prison. I turned to her, unable to contain my anger. Those children need help. They will carry this forever. Jake did this to himself. The divide in our family became a chasm after that day. Lynn and my father rallied around Jake, visiting him weekly, putting money in his commissary account, writing letters to the parole board. I refused to have any part in it. My focus remained where it belonged, on protecting my daughters and ensuring they grew up in a home free from the dysfunction that had shaped my childhood. Jake served only 3 years before being released on good behavior. Lynn called me the day he came home, her voice jubilant. He is doing so well. The counselors say he has made amazing progress. We are having a welcome home dinner on Sunday, and we want all of you to come. No, I said simply. My daughters will never be in the same room as him. That is non-negotiable. The silence on the other end of the line was heavy with tension. You cannot keep his nieces from him forever, Lynn finally said. He is family. Being family does not give him the right to access children. My children. The answer is no, now and always. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. A month after Jake's release, Lynn invited us to what she called a small family gathering at her house. She specifically mentioned that my father had been feeling unwell and wanted to see his granddaughters. Against my better judgment, I agreed to a short visit after confirming multiple times that Jake would not be there. Of course not, Lynn assured me. I understand your concerns. Sarah packed snacks for the girls, and we drove the 40 minutes to my parents' home. As soon as we pulled into the driveway, I knew something was wrong. There was an unfamiliar car parked next to my father's truck. My stomach tightened. "Wait here," I told Sarah, and walked up to the front door alone. I knocked, but did not wait for an answer before opening the door. And there, sitting on the couch next to my father, was Jake. The rage I felt in that moment was unlike anything I had ever experienced. I stepped back outside, closing the door behind me, and called Lynn's cell phone. She answered on the first ring. "We are leaving," I said, my voice shaking. "You lied to me. Please, just come in," Lynn begged. "Jake wants to apologize. He has changed. The counselors said reintegration with family is important for his recovery." "My daughters are not responsible for his recovery," I nearly shouted. "We had an agreement. You broke it. We are leaving." I hung up and walked back to the car where Sarah was already looking concerned. "He is here," I said simply. Without a word, she started the car. As we backed out of the driveway, I saw Lynn rush out of the house calling after us, but I instructed Sarah to keep driving. That night, my phone rang nonstop. First Lynn, then my father, and even Jake himself. I silenced each call, but finally answered when Lynn called from my father's phone. "How could you do this to your brother?" she demanded. "He was so hurt when you left." "How could I do this? How could you do this to my daughters? You deliberately tried to expose them to a convicted sex offender. He is their uncle. He has rights. He has no rights to my children. None." "You are being cruel," Lynn said, her voice cold. "Jake paid his debt to society. The girls need to know their uncle. My girls need to be safe," I countered. "That is the end of this discussion." But it was far from the end. Over the next few weeks, Lynn launched what could only be described as a campaign against me within our extended family. Aunts, uncles, and cousins began reaching out, suggesting I was being too harsh, that family should forgive each other, that Jake deserved a second chance. The most disturbing part was Lynn's fixation on my daughters. She began sending gifts addressed specifically to them with notes saying things like, "Uncle Jake helped pick this out for you," or "Uncle Jake misses you so much." I intercepted each package before the girls could see them. Then came the phone calls to Sarah when I was at work, trying to convince her to bring the girls for a visit without telling me. "Just for an hour," Lynn had pleaded. "Jake will stay in his room if that makes you more comfortable." Sarah, to her credit, shut it down immediately and told me everything. We agreed to block Lynn's number from her phone. The situation escalated when Lynn showed up at Emily's school one afternoon. Thankfully, we had already informed the school about the situation, and they refused to let her see Emily. When I received the call from the principal, I knew we needed more serious protection. The next day, I filed for a restraining order against Jake, specifying that he was to remain at least 500 feet away from my daughters and their school daycare and our home. When the sheriff served the papers, Lynn called me hysterical. "How could you do this to your own brother? After everything he has been through, I am protecting my children," I stated firmly. There was a pause, and when she spoke again, her voice was eerily calm. "You will regret this. If you want to use the legal system against your family, then you should prepare yourself. Two can play that game." I did not take her threat seriously at the time. That was my mistake. The legal notice arrived on a Tuesday morning. At first, I thought it was just more paperwork related to the restraining order. But as I read through the densely worded document, my blood ran cold. Lynn was filing for court-mandated grandparent visitation rights, and she was specifically asking that Jake be allowed to be present during these visits as a support person. I immediately called our family lawyer, who recommended a specialist in family law. The consultation fee alone was $500, but I did not hesitate. "This is unusual, but not unprecedented," the new lawyer, Patricia, explained after reviewing the documents. "Your mother is using a loophole in state law that was intended to protect grandparents' rights in cases of divorce or death of a parent. But neither of those apply here," I protested. Correct, which is why we have a strong case to fight this. However, she hesitated. Your mother has retained Simmons and Blackwell. They are an expensive firm that specializes in family rights cases. That evening, I called my father, hoping to understand what was happening. Dad, how is Mom affording Simmons and Blackwell? I asked, after cutting through his initial attempts to convince me to drop the restraining order. His long sigh told me everything before he even spoke. She took out a second mortgage on the house. I was stunned into silence. The house had been in our family for generations. It was where I had grown up, where my grandparents had lived before my parents. And Lynn had leveraged it, all to force my children into contact with Jake. She is determined, my father added quietly. You know how she gets once she has made up her mind. The financial strain hit us hard and fast. Patricia required a $10,000 retainer, which drained most of our savings. Sarah picked up extra shifts at the hospital where she worked as a nurse. I started driving for a rideshare service on weekends to supplement my income from my regular job. The emotional toll was even worse. Sarah and I began snapping at each other over small things. The girls sensed the tension becoming clingy and anxious. Emily started having nightmares, and Amanda developed a nervous habit of twisting her hair until it knotted. Even Lily, too young to understand what was happening, became fussier and more difficult to soothe. One night, after putting the girls to bed, I found Sarah sitting at the kitchen table crying silently over a stack of bills. I am sorry, I said, sitting beside her. I never thought my family would cause us this much pain. She wiped her eyes and reached for my hand. This is not your fault. We are doing the right thing. I would spend every penny we have to keep our girls safe. Her unwavering support gave me the strength to face what came next. The first court date was set for a preliminary hearing. Lynn arrived with Jake at her side, along with two attorneys in expensive suits. I tried to avoid looking at my brother, but when our eyes met briefly, I was chilled by the small smirk on his face. Lynn's lawyer presented their case first, painting a picture of a loving grandmother being maliciously cut off from her granddaughters by a vindictive son. They actually argued that Jake posed no threat, citing his completion of a prison rehabilitation program and his parole officer's reports of compliance with restrictions. My client simply wishes to maintain her relationship with her grandchildren, with her younger son, present as emotional support for her medical conditions, the lawyer stated, referencing Lynn's mild hypertension as if it were a terminal illness. When Patricia presented our case, she focused on the safety of the children and the concerning pattern of behavior by both Jake and Lynn. The respondent has one priority: the well-being of his daughters, Patricia argued. The petitioner has demonstrated repeatedly that she does not share that priority, attempting on multiple occasions to expose these minor children to a registered sex offender against their father's express wishes. The judge, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, seemed frustratingly neutral as she listened to both sides. When she spoke, her words sent ice through my veins. Grandparent rights are an important consideration in family law, she said. While the concerns about the uncle's history are valid, they must be balanced against the grandparent relationship. I am ordering a family evaluation before making a final determination. Outside the courtroom, Lynn approached me, her expression triumphant. You see, the judge understands the importance of family. It is not too late to drop this and let us work it out ourselves. I walked away without responding, my mind racing with fear and frustration. That night, as Sarah and I discussed the hearing, she had an idea. What about bringing in an expert witness, someone who specializes in child welfare cases involving offenders? We found Dr. Marissa Jenkins, a psychologist with 20 years of experience working with victims of abuse and their families. Her consultation fee was another financial hit, but her insights were invaluable. This case has red flags all over it, she said after reviewing the details. The grandmother's behavior shows a concerning prioritization of her offender son's interests over the safety of her grandchildren. The attempt to use legal means to force contact is particularly troubling. Dr. Jenkins agreed to testify at our next hearing and also suggested we investigate whether Jake was fully complying with his parole restrictions. This led us to hire a private investigator, yet another expense we could barely afford, who made a critical discovery. According to his parole terms, Jake was not supposed to live within 1,000 feet of any school, daycare, or place where children regularly congregate. The address he had registered with his parole officer was an apartment across town, but our investigator found evidence that he was actually living with Lynn and my father, whose house was just 600 feet from an elementary school playground. The next court date was scheduled for a full hearing. This time, we arrived prepared with Dr. Jenkins and the evidence from our investigator. Patricia presented our case, methodically introducing Dr. Jenkins' expert testimony about the risks of exposing children to individuals with Jake's history, even in supposedly supervised settings. In my professional opinion, Dr. Jenkins stated firmly, forcing these children to have contact with their uncle would create significant psychological risk and potentially undo the sense of security their parents have worked to establish. Then came the revelation about Jake's living situation. The judge's demeanor visibly shifted as Patricia presented the investigator's findings, including photographs showing Jake coming and going from Lynn's house early in the morning and late at night over a 2-week period. Lynn's lawyer attempted to dismiss the evidence, claiming Jake was just visiting frequently to help his aging parents. But the damage was done. The judge ordered a brief recess during which she contacted Jake's parole officer directly. When court resumed, the atmosphere had completely changed. The judge was now clearly troubled by what she had learned. "Mrs. Lynn," she addressed my mother directly, "were you aware that by allowing your son to reside in your home, you were facilitating a violation of his parole conditions?" Lynn's composure cracked. "He has nowhere else to go," she cried out. "The apartment is just for show. No one will rent to him once they know his history. He is my son. I cannot throw him out on the street." "And what about your granddaughters?" the judge pressed. "Did you consider the implications of having your son living in a residence you were fighting to bring them to? They would be safe. I would supervise everything." Lynn insisted, her voice rising. "My son is not a monster. He made mistakes. Everyone is destroying our family over mistakes." I was called to testify next, and as I took the stand, I looked directly at Lynn for the first time since the proceedings began. The woman who had raised me, who had taught me to ride a bike and bandaged my skinned knees, now looked like a stranger to me. "Can you tell the court why you feel these restrictions are necessary?" Patricia asked me. I took a deep breath. "My daughters are the most precious people in my world. It is my job to protect them, even when that means protecting them from my own family. My mother has shown repeatedly that she will put Jake's interests above my daughter's safety. She lied to get us to a family gathering where Jake was present. She showed up at my daughter's school unannounced. And now we know she has been harboring Jake in violation of his parole in a home she is fighting to bring my daughters to." My voice broke slightly, but I continued. "I do not want to keep my mother from having a relationship with her granddaughters. But that relationship cannot include Jake, and it cannot happen without my trust in her judgment. Trust that she has broken repeatedly." Lynn shot to her feet. "You are destroying this family," she shouted, tears streaming down her face. "After everything I have done for you, Jake needs us. He needs family to heal. Why can you not understand that?" The judge called for order, but Lynn continued. "I mortgaged my house for this, everything I have for my family, and you are tearing it all apart because you think you are better than us." In that moment, watching my mother's breakdown, I realized the full extent of her delusion. In her mind, Jake was the victim. His rehabilitation was the priority. My children's safety was secondary, an obstacle to her vision of family unity. The judge had Lynn removed from the courtroom until she could compose herself. When the hearing resumed, the judge's ruling was decisive. Based on the evidence presented, including the expert testimony and the concerning pattern of deception regarding the uncle's living situation, I am denying the petition for grandparent visitation rights. Furthermore, I am extending the restraining order to include Lynn Smith as well as Jake Smith, prohibiting contact with the minor children until further notice. She looked directly at me. "Mr. Smith, the court recognizes the difficult position you have been placed in. Your priority is clearly the safety of your children, as it should be." As we left the courthouse, I saw my father helping a sobbing Lynn to their car. Jake was nowhere to be seen. He had been taken into custody for the parole violation. My father looked up, his eyes, meeting mine, a mixture of sadness and resignation in his gaze. He gave a small nod, of understanding perhaps, or farewell, before turning away. The aftermath of the court case left our family fractured in ways I had never imagined possible. Lynn and my father lost their house when they couldn't keep up with the payments on the second mortgage. Jake was sent back to prison to serve the remainder of his original sentence with additional time for the parole violation. Extended family members who had initially sided with Lynn began reaching out to me apologizing for not understanding the situation fully. Some offered financial help to rebuild our depleted savings, which I reluctantly accepted. Others simply wanted to reconnect and be part of our lives again, which would take more time and trust building. The most difficult part was explaining to my daughters in age-appropriate ways why they would not be seeing their grandmother anymore. Emily, being the oldest, asked the most questions. "Is Grandma Lynn a bad person?" she asked one night as I tucked her in. "No, honey," I said after careful consideration. Grandma Lynn made some bad choices because she was confused about how to protect everyone in the family. Sometimes adults make mistakes too, even big ones. "Like when I broke your special mug and hid it?" Emily asked. I smiled and kissed her forehead. "Much bigger than that. But just like you learned from that mistake, I hope Grandma will learn from hers." Sarah and I decided that our family needed professional support to process everything that had happened. We found a wonderful family therapist who worked with us as a unit and also had individual sessions with the girls. Gradually, the nightmares and anxiety behaviors began to fade. We created new family traditions to replace the ones lost with my side of the family. Sunday dinners became a special time when we would cook together, trying recipes from around the world. We connected more deeply with Sarah's family, who welcomed us with open arms. We also built a chosen family of close friends who became aunts and uncles to our girls, people who earned our trust and shared our values. As months passed, I worked through my own complex feelings about what had happened. There was grief for the mother. I thought I had anger at her betrayal and guilt, about whether I could have somehow prevented the escalation. My therapist helped me understand that Lynn's choices were her own, and my responsibility was to my daughters, not to managing my mother's feelings or expectations. The hardest lesson was learning to define family by actions rather than blood. The people who truly love you protect you. They do not endanger you or those you love. They respect your boundaries rather than fight against them. They prioritize the vulnerable rather than those who cause harm. I made the difficult decision to maintain the complete break from Lynn and my father. Some relatives criticized this as too harsh, suggesting that with Jake back in prison, perhaps reconciliation was possible. But I had seen too clearly where Lynn's priorities lay, and I could not risk my daughter's well-being on the hope she might change. Sarah and I focused on building the kind of home I had always wanted as a child, one filled with respect, clear boundaries, and unconditional love. We taught our girls that they always had the right to say no to physical contact, even with family members. We showed them that their feelings and concerns would always be taken seriously. In time, I connected with other parents who had faced similar situations, having to protect their children from their own family members. Their stories helped me realize I was not alone, and the validation and support from people who truly understood was healing in a way nothing else could be. Today, our family is stronger than ever. Emily is thriving in school. Amanda has discovered a passion for soccer, and Lily charms everyone with her curiosity and determination. Sarah and I celebrate 10 years of marriage next month, a decade of partnership that has weathered storms I never could have anticipated. I still sometimes dream about the family I grew up in, about what could have been if Lynn had made different choices. But then I wake up to the family we have built, the one worth fighting for, and I know I made the right decision. Family is not just who you come from, it is who you would do anything to protect. It is where safety, respect, and love are not just promised but proven through actions every day. The family I created with Sarah is the one I always deserved, but never had growing up. And for my daughters, that makes all the difference in the world. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to protect your family from other family members? Let me know in the comments below. Your stories help others feel less alone in these impossible situations. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience and recovery. And if you know someone who might be struggling with similar family boundaries, share this video with them. Sometimes knowing others have walked this path makes it easier to find the strength to protect those who matter most. Thank you for listening. And remember, you are never wrong for protecting the vulnerable, even when it breaks your heart to do so.